Okay, have you ever stopped to think about how weird it is that as the world gets colder and darker and, frankly, a little more miserable, we humans do the exact opposite? We just decide to fill our homes with light, with food, with people. Well, let's get into it, because it turns out all that holiday cheer isn't just a nice tradition, it's a deep, ancient survival instinct.
I mean, it's this powerful, almost primal urge, right? When the nights are at their absolute longest, we push back. We push back with parties, with twinkling lights, with community. And what's wild is that this impulse is shared by cultures all over the globe, stretching back thousands and thousands of years. It's a fundamental question about who we are. And it all starts right here with the winter solstice. Now, astronomically, it's just a specific moment in time. The instant the North Pole is tilted as far away from the sun as it gets. But for people living on the ground, it's the peak of darkness. It's the big turning point, the moment the sun seems to stand still before it starts its long climb back, promising that longer days are on the way. And you have to understand, for our ancestors, this wasn't just some Nate fact for the calendar. This was everything. Without central heating or 24/7 grocery stores, the solstice was a critical, high-stakes moment. It was a time filled with both fear and hope. You've made it to the darkest point, and from here on out, the light and life itself is going to start coming back. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. This urge to celebrate, it's literally hardwired into our brains. Seriously. Less sunlight actually messes with our brain chemistry. It makes our serotonin levels, the happy chemical, take a nosedive. At the same time, melatonin, the hormone that makes you sleepy, hangs around a lot longer. So our bodies are biologically programmed to feel down and tired, creating this very real physical need to find light and be around other people. So how did our ancestors scratch that biological itch? Well, they didn't just light a few extra candles, that's for sure. They engineered massive, mind-boggling monuments, all perfectly aligned to capture the returning sun. Let's take a look at how they literally built hope right out of the stone. 5,200 years. That's how old the Newgrange monument in Ireland is. Now, to put that in perspective, this thing was built by farmers in the Stonehenge. It's older than Stonehenge. It's older than the Great Pyramids of Giza. It is one of the oldest and most amazing solar observatories on the entire planet. And what it does is just a miracle of engineering. For just 17 minutes on the mornings right around the winter solstice, a single, narrow beam of sunrise shoots through this perfectly placed little window. It travels 62 feet down a stone passage and completely lights up the central chamber inside. It's a stunning, symbolic act of bringing light and life back into the heart of the earth. And this wasn't just a one-off thing either. 1,000 miles away at Stonehenge, huge crowds were gathering for the exact same reason. But their focus was on the winter solstice sunset, which lines up perfectly with the giant stones. For them, this was the sacred moment of the sun's death and its glorious rebirth, a powerful promise of renewal for the whole community. But it wasn't just about incredible architecture. The other essential survival tool was, you guessed it, community. When food was getting scarce and the cold was a legitimate threat to your life, getting together for big feasts and rituals was a powerful shield. It was how you strengthened the social bonds that everyone depended on to make it through. So let's look at how this actually played out by comparing two of the most epic ancient winter festivals. Down in Rome, you had Saturnalia, which was basically a week-long anything-goes carnival. And way up north, the Norse celebrated Yule with a massive 12-day feast. As you can see, they were both all about light and food, but they had very different ways of bringing people together. The really wild thing about Saturnalia was this radical social flip-flop. For 1 week, the super rigid Roman hierarchy just dissolved. Masters would literally serve dinner to the people they enslaved, public gambling was totally fine, and a mock king was chosen to rule over all the chaos. It was all about remembering a mythical golden age when everyone was equal, and it reinforced the community by temporarily tearing down all its walls. The Norse Yule feasts, on the other hand, were a lot more structured. They used ritual to hammer home their cultural values. The drinking wasn't just for fun, it followed a very specific script. You'd raise a toast to Odin for victory in battle, then to the gods Njordr and Freyr for a good harvest, then to your king for being a good leader, and finally to the memory of fallen friends and family. It was a way to weave the past, present, and future all together. And this impulse to fight darkness with light and community is a truly global thing. It wasn't just happening in Europe, not by a long shot. All around the world,
Different cultures came up with their own unique and really beautiful traditions to mark this critical turning point of the year. So in ancient Persia, they celebrate Shab-e-Yalda. The tradition is to stay awake through the entire longest night of the year to prove that humanity can endure against the darkness. Families gather, they eat pomegranates and watermelons, whose red colors symbolize the coming dawn, and they read poetry aloud, often from the famous poet Hafez. Over in China and other parts of East Asia, the Dongji Festival is all about family reunion. It marks the return of longer days and, with it, an increase in positive yang energy. So families get together to eat tangyan, which are these sweet, sticky rice balls that symbolize togetherness and harmony. And right here in North America, the Hopi people of Arizona perform the Soyal ceremony. It's a very sacred, multi-day ritual. It's about welcoming the Kachinas, these benevolent spirit beings who are called upon to gently persuade the sun to turn back from its long winter sleep and warm the world for a new year. Okay, so we've seen how ancient people built incredible monuments, feasted like there was no tomorrow, and prayed to get through the winter. But what does any of this ancient history actually have to do with us today, with our iPhones and central heating? Well, it turns out, everything. Just think for a second about your own holiday traditions, the bright lights, the big family dinners, giving gifts, maybe an evergreen tree in your living room. None of that stuff is new. They are the modern-day echoes of these exact same ancient practices, passed down through thousands of years. Let's just draw a straight line, okay? Those massive bonfires that people lit for Yule and other festivals, they are the direct ancestors of the string of holiday lights you put up. The tradition of giving gifts that was so important to Saturnalia, that became the Christmas presents we exchange. The Norse custom of using evergreens as a symbol of life in the dead of winter, that's your Christmas tree. And those huge communal feasts, they live on in every single big holiday dinner we share. And these rituals have stuck around for one very simple reason. They work. Anthropologists call this stuff social glue. They are time-tested, powerfully effective ways to strengthen community bonds. For our ancestors, that social connection was about literal physical survival. For us, it's just as essential for our psychological well-being. So this year, this winter, as you get together with your friends and your family, just take a second to think about that. Every single twinkling light you switch on, every meal you share, every song you sing, you are taking part in a story that's been going on for something like 10,000 years. It's the ancient story of how we as a species have always found our greatest hope and our deepest warmth in the very darkest time of year.